INTJs are known for their calm demeanor, strategic thinking, and unwavering self-control. But when they're confronted with toxicity, they become a force to be reckoned with. Toxic people often rely on manipulation, drama, and emotional games to maintain their power. However, an INTJ doesn't need to raise their voice or make a scene. They know how to cut through the nonsense and dismantle a toxic person's influence without breaking a sweat. If you've ever wondered how an INTJ handles negativity, here's a look at 7 cold-blooded things they do to shut it down and take back control. Don't expect an INTJ to yell, cry, or beg for peace. They'll handle it in their own precise, calculated way. Number 1. They cut off communication without explanation. Toxic people thrive on attention, drama, and emotional responses, so the most brutal thing an INTJ can do is cut off all communication with zero explanation. They don't need to explain their actions, and they won't engage in a lengthy conversation trying to justify themselves. When an INTJ realizes someone is toxic, they'll simply withdraw, disappear, and leave the person questioning what went wrong. This silence is more powerful than any confrontation because it leaves the toxic person with no closure, no answers, and no way to continue manipulating the situation. Unlike those who beg for explanations or closure, INTJs know that their absence speaks louder than any words can. The toxic person will be left to stew in their confusion, which is a form of punishment in itself. INTJs don't give toxic people the satisfaction of an argument or an explanation. They simply cut them off completely. The coldness of this move sends a clear message: you're not worth my time. Number 2, they expose inconsistencies without a second thought. INTJs have a sharp eye for detail and an unyielding commitment to truth. When dealing with a toxic person, they'll observe and wait for the first sign of inconsistency, and when it comes, they'll strike without hesitation. Toxic people often build their narratives on lies or half-truths, thinking they can get away with manipulating others. But an INTJ will expose these inconsistencies with brutal clarity. They don't need to argue. They simply point out where the person's words and actions don't line up, often catching the toxic individual off guard. This tactic is a cold move because it shatters the false persona the toxic person is trying to maintain. The toxic person will find it hard to continue their manipulations, as they'll now be on the defensive, trying to explain their contradictions. INTJs don't feel guilty for this. They know the toxic person deserves the discomfort of being exposed. It's an act of ultimate detachment, exposing them, then moving on. Number 3, they let the toxic person self-destruct. INTJs aren't about jumping into conflict. They prefer to sit back and let toxic people dig their graves. Toxic individuals often rely on manipulation, drama, and ego to hold on to their power. But an INTJ sees these tactics and chooses to wait for the inevitable collapse. Instead of directly confronting the person, they observe how the toxic person burns bridges with others, creates chaos, or exposes their weaknesses. When an INTJ steps back, the toxic person becomes their downfall because their behavior ultimately alienates them from everyone else. INTJs don't waste their energy trying to fix or argue with toxic people. They know that the best way to destroy them is to let them destroy themselves. Over time, the toxic people will dig themselves into a deeper hole, with no one around to defend them or clean up the mess. The INTJ doesn't even need to lift a finger. It's cold, calculated, and effective. Just watch as the toxic person's actions lead to their downfall. Number 4, they use logic to completely disarm emotional manipulation. Toxic people often manipulate through guilt, anger, or emotional appeals, hoping to gain control of a situation. An INTJ, however, knows exactly how to disarm emotional manipulation with cold, hard logic. When faced with a toxic person trying to manipulate them, the INTJ will calmly state facts, point out contradictions, and bring the conversation back to reality. They won't engage in emotional drama or become defensive. Instead, they'll use logic and reason to expose how flawed the manipulator's approach is. Toxic people can't handle this because they rely on emotional chaos to maintain their control. An INTJ's ability to remain calm and rational in the face of emotional manipulation completely undermines the toxic person's power. The result? The manipulator is left speechless, unable to continue their emotional games. It's a ruthless move that makes them feel small and irrelevant. The INTJ's logical precision exposes the toxicity for what it is, and they don't even have to raise their voice to do it. Number 5. They use silence to create uncertainty. Silence is a powerful weapon for an INTJ, especially when dealing with toxic people. When a toxic person expects a response, whether it's an argument, a defense, or an explanation, the INTJ will give nothing. This lack of reaction creates intense discomfort and confusion. Toxic people thrive on reactions, whether they're positive or negative, but INTJs know that silence is a form of control that leaves others questioning themselves. By withholding any response, the INTJ forces the toxic individual to confront their insecurities and question whether they've lost their grip on the situation. This unsettling silence gives the INTJ the upper hand because it's clear that the toxic person no longer has any influence. The longer the silence lasts, the more their ego will deflate as they try to figure out what went wrong. It's cold, calculated, and completely disarming. Number 6. They offer no validation or attention. Toxic people often seek validation, whether through praise, attention, or controlling others. An INTJ gives them none. When a toxic person seeks approval, feedback, or any form of acknowledgement from an INTJ, they'll get nothing but indifference. INTJs don't indulge in validation games because they don't care about social hierarchies or praise. When faced with someone craving attention or validation, they'll simply withhold it completely, leaving the toxic person feeling invisible and unimportant. This move works because toxic people rely on others to build their inflated self-image, and when that image is left unacknowledged, it slowly crumbles. The INTJ knows that ignoring someone's attempts for validation is the most effective way to make them feel powerless. The best part? They don't need to say a word. Their lack of engagement speaks volumes. Number 7. They let go of people without a second thought. INTJs are strategic and calculated in every aspect of their lives, including relationships. When a toxic person becomes a liability, the INTJ doesn't waste time or energy on them. They'll simply cut ties and move forward without hesitation. The toxic person might beg for another chance or promise to change, but the INTJ doesn't get emotionally attached to the chaos. They'll calmly let go of the person, understanding that they're not worth the energy. This cold decision is one of the most devastating because it leaves the toxic person with no opportunity to redeem themselves. The INTJ doesn't drag things out. They move on, knowing that keeping a toxic person around is more damaging than walking away. In doing so, they send a clear message: I will not tolerate negativity. Toxic people are left to wallow in their manipulation, while the INTJs simply continue their lives without looking back. Are you an INTJ? If this resonates, you're part of a rare breed. Subscribe for more insight into how you can use your mind as a powerful tool for personal growth and protection.